What if I told you there's a message meant for you that was hidden away for over half a century? Not lost by accident, but deliberately buried. A revelation spoken by a man some called the sleeping prophet, a man who accessed dimensions of consciousness most people can't even begin to comprehend. His final words about what happens after you die were recorded and then silenced, not because they were untrue, but because they were too true, too clear, too dangerous to the world that profits off your fear of death. You're hearing this now because you're ready. Maybe you don't even know why you clicked on this. Maybe it was just curiosity. Or maybe, deep down, something stirred in you, something ancient, a whisper from your own soul that said, listen carefully, and if you're still here, it's because that whisper was right. This isn't just a story, this is a key. Near the end of his life, Ed Casey gave an interview he knew the world wasn't ready for. Not his public readings, not the medical miracles, not the predictions of world events. No, this was different. This was the truth about the afterlife. What really happens when your heart stops, what death really is, and what it isn't. But this truth never made it to the public. It was transcribed, archived, and sealed, buried beneath bureaucratic layers, dismissed as fantasy, labeled as non-essential. Why? Because it didn't align with religious dogma, because it stripped power from those who weaponized fear, because it made death not terrifying, but transformational. And if people knew the truth, they would start living differently. And you're hearing it now for a reason. Maybe you're nearing the final chapter of your life, or maybe someone you love is. Maybe death has been hovering on the horizon of your thoughts, silent but unrelenting. Or maybe you've simply reached a point where you're done being afraid. Whatever brought you here, it wasn't random. It never is. Imagine this. Casey, weathered by decades of channeling visions and truths beyond this world, sitting down one last time to speak plainly. No audience, no censorship, no agenda, just truth. He knew the limits of what he could share publicly, and he also knew those limits were artificial. So when the tape recorder was set in front of him and the final questions were asked, he didn't hold back. What he said shook the room. He didn't speak of pearly gates or eternal damnation. He didn't warn of sins or promise salvation in the way religion has conditioned you to expect. Instead, he spoke of continuity, of consciousness that doesn't end but expands. He said that when the body fails, when breath ceases, what comes next is not an end, it's a lifting, like removing a heavy coat you forgot you were wearing. He described how the soul floats, untethered and weightless, in complete clarity, not drifting into darkness, but into a light more familiar than anything you've ever known. A return, a homecoming. And perhaps the most revolutionary thing he said was this: death is not the opposite of life, it's the continuation of it. That sentence, simple, profound, was all it took to ensure that the interview would never see the light of day. Because if death is not the end, if death is simply a shift, then the power structures that thrive on fear lose their grip. If you knew without a doubt that your soul survives, how differently would you live? Would you keep postponing joy? Would you hoard regrets? Would you fear aging? Would you keep pretending you're separate from those you've lost? See, the reason you're hearing this now isn't just because of curiosity. It's because some part of you has already begun to remember. You've started to sense that there's more, that the world you see is only a thin veil draped over a much larger truth. You're not crazy for thinking you've felt someone near you after they passed. You're not imagining it when time seems to slow down and you get chills for no reason. You're not delusional for dreaming of the same person over and waking up with tears in your eyes. Casey knew those moments were visits. He said the veil is thinner than we've been told. He explained that the dead don't disappear. They shift dimensions. Their energy, their consciousness still surrounds you, but your fear, your grief, your disbelief, those are the things that cloud your vision. Remove those, and you begin to see again, to feel again, to know again. This is why the interview was banned. Because it didn't just answer the question of what happens when you die, it explained how you can prepare while you're still alive. How the choices you make today determine the frequency of your next reality. He spoke of vibrational law, of spiritual frequency, of dimensional physics that modern science is only now beginning to catch up to. But for Casey, these weren't theories. He saw them. And you You're hearing this because your soul asked to. Maybe this is the first time you've been told that you don't need to be afraid, that everything you are, all your memories, all your love, all your essence is not tied to this physical body. It never was. You are awareness wrapped in light. You are a beam of consciousness temporarily experiencing density. And when that density lifts, when the body can no longer hold your light, you rise, not into judgment, but into clarity. If you've lost someone recently, if you've watched someone leave their body, this message is for you too. They are not gone. They are not trapped. They are simply elsewhere. They are more alive now than you can imagine. But your mourning, your refusal to believe they still exist, is what keeps them at a distance. Casey said that souls long to be remembered as present, not past. Speak to them, not with doubt, but with expectation. You'll feel them. So let me ask you something you may not have asked yourself yet. Why are you hearing this now? Not your neighbor, not your friend, you. You with all your years of seeking, you who's brushed against death, whether personally or through loss. You who is ready to go deeper than comfort zones and doctrines. Because the time is right. Because you're nearing a threshold, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. Because this message was always meant for you, but it had to wait until you could truly receive it. You can't unhear what's been said, not because it's frightening, but because it's familiar. A part of you already knows. That same part is stirring now. The one that remembers what comes after. The one that has always existed beyond time, beyond name, beyond flesh. And that's where this journey begins. There will come a moment when your breath slows, your heartbeat will soften into silence. And in that moment something strange will happen. Not darkness, not terror, not a sudden end, but a gentle loosening, like slipping out of a tight coat you've been wearing for too long. It won't be a collapse, it will be a release, a return. Because you are not your body, you never were. The body is temporary, yes, sacred, yes, meaningful, but it is not you. It's the vessel, not the voyager, the house, not the inhabitant. And when that vessel is no longer needed, when it has carried your spirit as far as it can, you will step beyond it as easily as you remove a pair of shoes before crossing a sacred threshold. This is not a poetic metaphor. It's a spiritual truth. You see, consciousness does not reside inside the body like a prisoner locked in a cell. It flows through the body, animates it, observes through it. But when the body fails, that consciousness remains untouched, not dimmed, not diminished, just unbound. It lifts, it expands, and in that expansion you remember something you've always known deep down: you cannot die. Your essence, your being, is not made of flesh and bone. It is made of awareness, of vibration, of memory and meaning and presence. All of these transcend biology. All of these continue. And yet, this truth has been buried. For centuries, the idea that your soul survives death, not as a ghost or a distant whisper, but as a fully aware self, has been suppressed. Not because it isn't real, but because it's liberating, because it makes you ungovernable. If you no longer fear death, you become dangerous to those who build their power on fear. If you know that your soul existed before this life and will continue long after it, you stop clinging to systems built on obedience. You become curious, expansive. You ask real questions. You see through illusions. Religious institutions have long depended on a transactional model. Behave in this life and you'll be rewarded in the next. Disobey and you'll be punished. But what if it's not like that at all? What if no one is sitting on a throne keeping score? What if heaven and hell aren't places but states of being that emerge from your own energy? That kind of revelation crumbles empires. And science, though noble in its quest for understanding, has also been afraid. Because science, rooted in materialism, demands proof that can be measured, repeated, seen. But consciousness? It's not bound by microscopes or formulas. You can't weigh a soul on a scale. You can't trap awareness in a petri dish. So instead it's dismissed, ignored, called unprovable, or worse, imaginary. But those who've stood at the edge between life and death, who've watched their loved ones leave their bodies and still felt them in the room, they know. Not with words, with presence, with knowing. There are whispers that come in the quiet moments, when logic falls asleep. Whispers that tell you your grandmother is still near. that the friend you lost in that accident never really left, that the man you loved still visits you in your dreams, not as memory, but as soul. You've felt it, haven't you? That unexplainable warmth when thinking of someone who's passed. That moment when a certain song plays and it feels like a message, the way the light hits the room in just the right way, and you know that someone beyond the veil is reaching out to remind you, I'm still here. That's not imagination. That's the truth, slipping through the cracks in your conditioning. You are not your name. You are not your age. You are not your career or your history or even your personality. Those are roles, temporary identities. But beneath all of it, you are the observer, the one who has watched your body age, who has felt your thoughts shift, who has survived heartbreak and joy and quiet mornings. That watcher, that essence has no age. It does not decay. It cannot be buried. And when the final breath comes, you will not disappear. You will wake up. You'll find yourself in a space beyond time, beyond gravity, beyond suffering. A space where you will feel lighter than you've ever felt, but more real than you've ever imagined. And in that space, you will say, of course I continue. How could I ever have believed I ended? This truth, the immortality of the soul, was once common knowledge. Ancient mystics, indigenous tribes, Egyptian initiates, Tibetan monks, they all knew. They didn't fear death. They prepared for it. They understood it as a journey, not a punishment, a transition, not a tragedy. But somewhere along the way we forgot. We traded our sacred knowing for doctrine, for institutions, for fear. And in doing so, we became small. We started to believe that we were fragile, vulnerable, temporary beings, that we had to earn salvation, that we could be lost. But you can't be lost. You are the path. Right now, inside your chest, beneath your breath, there is a stillness. That stillness is not emptiness. It is the doorway, and the closer you come to the end of this life, the more that doorway begins to open. Not to take you away, but to bring you home. So let this truth sink in, not just into your mind, but into your bones. You were never born in the way you think, and you will never die in the way you fear. When the body is done, you, the real you, remains. Not floating aimlessly, not lost in the dark, but guided, welcomed, recognized. The light you return to isn't foreign. It's the same light you came from, the same light you've always carried inside. It's not the end, it's a remembering. And now you know why they were afraid to let this be heard. Because a person who knows they are eternal becomes powerful in the present. They stop waiting for life to begin. They stop fearing its end. They stop believing that grief means goodbye. You are the soul, you are the presence, you are the spark that never goes out, and the only thing death takes is the illusion that you were ever anything less. There is a moment, barely noticeable at first, when everything changes. Not with a crash or a blinding flash, but with a gentle lift, a quiet separation that feels more like a sigh than a rupture. One moment, you're in your body. The next, you're not. And strangely, it doesn't feel like you've gone anywhere. It feels like you've simply removed something heavy, something you didn't even realize you'd been carrying. The body no longer holds you. But there's no panic, no confusion, only stillness. This is what has been called the flow. It's not a dream. It's not a hallucination. It's the first step in returning to who you've always been. The moment the tether between your consciousness and your physical form releases, you feel a freedom unlike anything you've ever experienced. Gravity disappears. Pain disappears. The tightness around your thoughts, your breath, your emotions, gone. And yet, you are still you. You can think. You can feel. You can observe. That may surprise you. Most people assume that death will feel like blackness, like silence, like the final curtain falling. But it doesn't. It feels like waking up from a long, strange dream, one where the rules were always a little off, one where you were always aware, somewhere deep inside, that you are acting in a play, wearing a costume. Now the costume is gone, and what remains is clarity. But here's the thing, and it might shock you. Many people don't realize they've died. It's not because they're unconscious, it's the opposite. They feel so awake, so present, so normal, that it doesn't occur to them that anything has changed. That's how seamless the transition can be. The sensations don't scream you've crossed over. Instead, everything just becomes a little brighter, a little lighter, a little more true. You may look around and see the same room you were in moments ago. You may see the people who were with you, doctors, loved ones, nurses. You may even try to speak, not yet noticing that your voice no longer stirs the air. In fact, you might continue thinking that you're simply dreaming, resting, floating in some in-between state. But it's not a dream, it's the beginning of your return. For some, there's a moment of realization, a flash of insight, a ripple in the mind that says this feels different. And then it clicks, not with fear, but with awe. I'm free. But others stay unaware, not because they're unintelligent or lost, but because they were never told what to expect. No one prepared them. Death was something to be feared, not explored. So when it came softly, they didn't recognize its shape. And so they linger. Not stuck, not condemned, just hovering between dimensions, still trying to make sense of what happened. They see their loved ones crying, but they feel no pain. They hear prayers spoken over their body, but they don't feel gone. They feel present. Some try to reach out. They move closer to those they love. They whisper. They try to make contact through thought. And if the person is sensitive, open, receptive, they might feel it. A sudden warmth, a soft brush against their cheek, a presence in the room that defies logic but demands attention. This is why so many near-death experiences report the same thing. It was the most peaceful moment of my life. They speak of floating above the body, watching with a kind of detached compassion. They describe being fully conscious, sometimes more conscious than ever before, while doctors declare them clinically dead. It's not fantasy. It's not delusion. It's the beginning of an ancient journey. And here's where it gets even more incredible. These experiences, these descriptions of the floats are consistent across cultures, across religions, across time. People who have never met, who speak different languages, who follow different spiritual paths, all describe the same thing. The weightlessness, the clarity, the sudden shocking realization that they are still alive, but no longer bound to form. Mystics have spoken of it for centuries. In ancient texts, they called it the silver thread, the energetic connection between soul and body severed gently at the moment of transition. In Eastern traditions, it's known as prana, leaving through the crown chakra. In shamanic visions, it's described as the eagle flight, the soul lifting above the world to begin its return home. No matter the name, the feeling is the same. You are not bound by the laws of matter anymore. And once that truth settles in, everything begins to change. Time bends. You no longer feel tethered to minutes or hours. You can move without walking, speak without words, sense without eyes. You feel your thoughts as reality, pure, unfiltered, immediate. You may find yourself in places you loved, revisiting sacred memories, saying unspoken goodbyes, or you may be greeted, not by strangers, but by presences that feel like family. Energies you've known for lifetimes. Guides, loved ones, even those you forgot you loved, who've been waiting for this reunion with open arms. But none of this happens with fanfare. There's no trumpet blast, no dramatic rift in the sky. It unfolds like a dream you suddenly realize you're awake inside of. And yet, for all its beauty, many are unprepared, because no one told them that death can feel like a homecoming. They were taught to dread it, to resist it, to fight it until the very end. So when it arrives as peace, as stillness, as light, they doubt it. They try to hold on to the body, to the room, to the life they just stepped out of. But the longer they linger, the more they begin to feel the call, not a voice, a pull, gentle, loving, familiar. It tugs at the soul, reminding it that it's time to move forward. Some go quickly, others take their time. There is no rush. The realm just beyond physical perception is patient, and it waits with deep compassion. You may wonder why this part of death has been kept quiet. Why is it not taught? Why is it not comfortingly woven into every culture, every hospital, every hospice? Because to admit that death is peaceful, to admit that the soul floats free and conscious, would collapse the systems built around fear. It would dismantle the control mechanisms that insist you need a savior, a ritual, a ticket to heaven. But the truth doesn't require approval. It lives inside you, and when the time comes, you'll know it not because someone tells you, but because it will rise in you like a memory a soft and certain knowing that you are not lost, you are simply transitioning. And if you find yourself one day feeling that strange weightlessness, that drifting sensation that feels neither up nor down, don't be afraid. You're not falling, you're remembering how to rise. Forget what you've been told about heaven and hell. Forget the fiery punishments and golden gates. Forget the thrones and the scales, the judgment days and the eternal sentences. None of it is real in the way you've imagined. These are metaphors, symbols shaped by centuries of fear, power and control. What actually awaits you after this life is far more precise, far more elegant and far more empowering. There is no place called heaven. There is no pit called hell. There is only frequency. There is only vibration. You are and have always been an energetic being. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every intention you hold, these shape the frequency you carry. It's not theoretical. It's not abstract. Your vibration is as real as gravity. And when you leave the body, that vibration determines where you go next. It's not a reward. It's not a punishment. It's resonance. Just like a tuning fork finds its matching tone, your soul finds its matching realm. That realm might be radiant, peaceful, breathtakingly beautiful, or it might feel dense, confusing, murky, not because someone sends you there, but because that's the vibrational state you've brought with you. The law is simple. Like attracts like. If you've lived a life of love, compassion, presence, even in small, imperfect ways, that vibration carries forward. If you've been bitter, controlling, consumed by anger or fear, that energy doesn't disappear at death, it continues until it transforms. So what people have called heaven, it isn't a destination you earn, it's a dimension you align with. And hell, it's not a place of torture, it's the internal dissonance of a soul out of harmony, a soul still wrapped in confusion, regret, or resistance. Some souls, after death, experience incredible lightness. They enter spaces where time dissolves, where music and color dance together, where everything they've ever loved exists in one unified field. They feel peace not because someone grants it to them, but because they carry it. They become aware of the reality that matches their state of being. Others find themselves wandering, lost in loops of memory or thought, not because they're being punished, but because they haven't yet let go. They're still holding on to the illusion of who they were. They're still vibrating in fear, resentment, guilt, and the universe, in its perfect neutrality, reflects that back to them. It's not about being good or bad. Those are human concepts, shaped by culture and religion. What matters is energy, integrity, authenticity, expansion. You could be someone the world judged harshly, but if you cultivated inner truth, if you acted from your heart, if you lived with awareness, even in private, silent ways, your soul vibrates higher. And this is where dogma has failed us. It told us we'd be judged by an external force, that our deeds would be measured on scales by a distant deity, that rules mattered more than awareness, that obedience was more important than authenticity. But the universe doesn't operate on rules. It operates on resonance. It doesn't care what you believed, it responds to what you embodied, and belief without embodiment is meaningless. You could recite every prayer, attend every ritual, follow every doctrine, but if your inner world was filled with bitterness, superiority, or self-righteousness, that's what echoes through your frequency. That's what shapes your next experience. This is why some of the most luminous souls are not saints, or priests, or gurus. They're the quiet ones, the ones who loved without applause, the ones who forgave without being asked, the ones who walked through their pain with open hearts. Their vibration is high because their truth was high. The mechanics of transition, the real ones, are as natural as gravity. They don't require anyone's permission. They don't care what religion you followed, what God you prayed to, what scripture you memorized. The moment you leave your body, the vibrational law takes over, and it is unfailing. There are realms of learning, of healing, of reflection. There are places, if we can even call them that, where souls go to remember, to recover, to understand the deeper patterns of their journey. In these spaces, you're not asked what you did. You see what you did. You feel it. You experience how your energy moved through others, what it created, what it echoed. Not as punishment, as clarity, And clarity in those higher dimensions is the most healing force there is. Some souls, seeing their patterns, choose to rest. Some choose to return and continue their work in another life. Some choose to serve, to guide, to whisper, to light the path for those still walking the earth. But they choose, not a council, not a gatekeeper. They do. This is the radical, beautiful truth that has been hidden from you. You are not at the mercy of a cosmic judge. You are the creator of your experience here and after. The vibrational law is not cruel. It is perfect. It doesn't shame you, it simply mirrors you. And if what you see is painful, it's only so you can evolve. Religion, for all its beauty, has often distorted this. It has focused on fear rather than freedom. It has kept people small, obedient, anxious. Because fear is easier to control than awakening. But once you realize that your energy is the only passport you need, once you understand that heaven is not a reward but a frequency you access, something inside you changes. You begin to take your thoughts more seriously. You begin to speak with more intention. You begin to love with more depth. Not to impress the divine, but to remember that you are divine. You stop fearing death, not because you want to die, but because you realize that death is not an end or a judgment. It's a shift, a vibrational transition into the world your soul is most aligned with. And if that world isn't yet the paradise you imagined, that's not failure. That's feedback. You are not punished for your vibration. You are taught by it. You evolve through it. The beautiful thing about energy is that it can always rise. No matter how dark your past, no matter what you've done or believed, your soul has the capacity to transform, to attune itself to higher frequencies, to shift into realms of light and love and peace. And when you do, you don't just prepare for death, you begin to truly live. You live without fear. You live without shame. You live without pretending. Because you know every moment you spend in joy, in kindness, in truth is not wasted. It is crafting your future reality. It is tuning your soul like an instrument. And when the time comes to release this body, the universe won't ask for credentials. It will listen to your tone. It will hear the music you've made. And it will welcome you to the place where that music already exists. Not because you were perfect, but because you were vibrating in the direction of home. There is a moment, one sacred breath between worlds, when the soul prepares to step beyond the veil. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, intimate, and filled with the presence of everything you've ever been. But what happens in that moment depends on something most people never think about. Fear. Not the fear of pain, not even the fear of loss. It's something deeper, the fear of letting go, the fear of surrendering to the unknown, the fear that if you loosen your grip on this world, you will fall into nothingness. But that isn't what happens. What happens is determined by your willingness or your resistance to let go. The transition between life and death isn't a cliff, it's a doorway. But fear, when clutched tightly, becomes the lock on that door. It creates static, not in the air, but in the spirit, a kind of interference, a buzzing, a haze, a confusion. The soul begins to rise, but it's weighed down by invisible threads, unresolved guilt, unfinished business, unspoken truths, attachments to people, places, things. The soul doesn't fear the journey ahead, it fears what it might have to leave behind. And yet, it is the act of letting go that allows the crossing to become not a stumble but a step, a conscious movement, a birth into greater awareness. But when fear dominates, the soul hesitates, it clings, it tries to hold on to the body, to the identity, to the narrative it spent a lifetime constructing. I am this, it insists. I worked so hard for this, I built this life, I earned this name, I carried this pain, I can't just leave it. And in that resistance the light begins to blur, the guidance begins to fade. Not because it's gone, but because fear clouds the vision. Like fog rolling in over a mountain path, fear doesn't destroy the trail, it just hides it. Many souls, upon dying, find themselves in a kind of liminal space, not in darkness, but in distortion. They feel unanchored, confused, unsure of what's next. They don't know they've died, or they're unsure if they're allowed to move forward. They're still attached to earth, to the roles they played, to the possessions they guarded. Their energy still vibrating with fear and clinging, cannot yet rise to the clarity of the next dimension. This is why preparation matters. Not preparing your finances, not your funeral, but preparing your spirit, releasing fear, releasing control, practicing surrender. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest lessons you'll ever learn. Because surrender asks you to trust what you cannot see. It asks you to walk into the unknown not with armor, but with openness. It asks you to believe that what lies ahead is not punishment, but peace. We have been taught the opposite. We've been trained to grip, to fight, to win, to secure, to gather and gather, as if more stuff means more safety. We've been taught to define ourselves by our roles, our achievements, our reputations, but when the moment comes to release all of that, we find ourselves panicked. Who am I without my body? Who am I without my family? Who am I without my story? You are not your story. You are the soul who experienced it. The truth is, nothing you've ever truly loved is lost in the crossing. Not the people, not the memories, not the essence of what made you who you are. What you lose is the illusion of separation, the illusion of control, the illusion of permanence. But fear keeps those illusions alive. It tells you if you let go, you'll vanish, when in fact it is only through letting go that you finally see who you really are. Acceptance isn't weakness, it's spiritual strength. It's not giving up, it's opening up. It's saying to the universe, I trust what comes next. I trust that I am being led. I trust that I am not alone. And you're not. At the moment of death, countless souls are met, not by strangers, but by the familiar. Loved ones who crossed before you, guides who have walked with you since the beginning, beings who know your energy intimately. They're there not to judge, not to command, but to welcome. But when fear takes over, many souls don't see them. They can't feel the embrace. They can't hear the whispers. Fear closes the channel. It jams the signal. Imagine trying to tune into a beautiful piece of music, but your radio is full of static. That static isn't coming from the music. It's coming from you. That's what fear does. You've probably felt it in life, those moments when fear made you blind to love, deaf to truth, numb to joy. It's no different in death. That's why so many teachings across time, cultures, and spiritual traditions emphasize the same thing: release. Let go. Not just at the end, but now. Let go of the old anger you carry like a medal. Let go of the bitterness that sits in your chest like a stone. Let go of the need to be right, the need to be in control, the need to prove your worth. These things don't serve you. They weigh you down, and when the time comes, they will rise up and create turbulence. But when you live a life of release, of softening, of forgiveness, your transition becomes clear, gentle. You begin to rehearse surrender in small ways, by breathing through conflict, by accepting change, by loving without conditions. These become your practice. So when the big surrender comes, it won't feel foreign, it will feel familiar. Many people spend their last years grasping at youth, at health, at the illusion of control. But that's not the way through. The way through is to begin releasing, slowly, mindfully, not with sadness, but with reverence. Let go of what no longer serves you. Let go of what was never really you to begin with. Even your body, when the time comes, can be released with love, not as a betrayal, but as a graduation. Thank you, you will say. You carried me, you taught me. Now I return to light. When you do this, the static fades, the haze lifts, and what remains is clarity, calm, and movement. You rise, not into darkness, but into light that was always there, waiting for you to stop gripping long enough to receive it. This is the essence of what was once hidden. This is what you were never taught, that fear is not a warning sign, it is an obstacle, and the sooner you face it, the more gracefully you can transcend it, because on the other side of fear is freedom. And that freedom doesn't start after you die. It starts the moment you choose to trust. When the moment comes, when your final breath slips quietly from your chest and the veil begins to thin, you will not be alone, not even for a second. This is one of the greatest lies ever told, that death is a solitary crossing, that you slip into some great silence, isolated, unseen. It's not true. It has never been true. From the very first soul to pass from this world into the next, the truth has remained constant. You are welcome. Not by strangers, not by unfamiliar beings, but by those who have loved you through lifetimes. Some call them soul greeters, others say the welcome committee. But the language doesn't matter. What matters is that they come. They always come. They are the ones who crossed before you. Parents, siblings, partners, children, friends. Even souls whose names you've forgotten but whose energy is written into the very core of who you are. They know when your moment is approaching. Not in the way humans know with calendars and clocks, but through resonance. The soul calls out, and they feel it instantly, and they gather. You might not remember them all yet, but they remember you. They know the real you, the version of yourself that exists beyond the labels, beyond the personality traits and the temporary roles you've played on Earth. They see through to your essence, and they love you in a way that feels ancient, complete, familiar. They don't appear in a rush. There's no sudden flood of faces or hands grabbing at you. They arrive as presence, as warmth, as recognition. You feel them before you see them. A pressure in the air that doesn't weigh you down but lifts you. A frequency that makes your entire being feel remembered. And when your soul separates from the body, when you begin to float into that subtle realm that exists just beyond physical perception, they step forward. Some are smiling, some are silent, but their message is always the same. You're not alone. There is something deeply sacred about this reunion. It's not just a warm greeting, it's a homecoming. Every goodbye you've ever whispered in grief is answered here. Every tear you've shed, thinking they were gone forever, is acknowledged. And now, at this crossing point, you understand that no bond of love ever truly breaks. Energy does not vanish. Love is energy. Therefore, love cannot die. The connection you formed in life, through laughter, through pain, through memories stitched across decades, did not dissolve when they passed. It simply changed form. It became subtler, quieter, waiting for you to remember how to listen. And maybe you've felt it, late at night when the room goes still, in your dreams where a familiar voice returns, in those moments of sudden peace that arrive without reason, almost like someone touched your heart from the other side. That was them, reaching, reassuring, waiting. The bonds between souls are not cut by death. They are not measured by proximity. They are measured by resonance. The more love you shared, the stronger the resonance. The more unfinished the conversation, the louder the echo. Even those who left you in pain, those with whom the relationship was complicated, unresolved, they too may come, not to shame you, not to stir guilt, but to help both of you find closure, healing, completion. Because in that space beyond the physical, the soul isn't interested in blame. It's interested in wholeness. And here's something that might surprise you. Your soul family, the group of energies you've incarnated with again and again, will often greet you together. Not just the ones you remember from this life, but those who've traveled with you through lifetimes. They come in recognition, and when you see them, it's like hearing a song you've always known but forgot you love, a melody that plays only in sacred spaces. These are not ghosts, these are not visions, these are real presences, real beings, real energy. They've been watching, guiding, sometimes interfering, sometimes stepping back, but always there. Even now, in the life you're living at this very moment, their presence surrounds you. You've likely felt them and dismissed it. That brush against your cheek when no one was there. That sudden, inexplicable comfort during a painful moment. That strange, beautiful scent that reminded you of someone long gone. They were speaking, not with words, but with energy, and you knew it. Not with logic, but with your inner knowing. The problem is, modern life has trained you to ignore that knowing, to write it off as imagination, as coincidence. But you don't imagine love. You don't hallucinate peace. When that sense of presence falls over you like a blanket, you're not making it up. You're remembering how to feel. You don't have to wait until death to connect. You don't have to cross over to hear their whispers. But to do so, you must get quiet. You must stop expecting them to speak in the way they once did. They are beyond language now. But their energy? That is still sharp, still focused, still ready to touch you. If you're willing to soften. Try this. Sit in silence and remember someone who has passed. Not with grief, but with openness. Call them, not aloud, but with your heart. Say, I'm listening. Say, I'm here. Then, wait. You might feel nothing, or you might feel everything. Sometimes it's a sudden shift in temperature, sometimes it's the flicker of a candle, sometimes it's just a knowing that blooms in your chest like a flower you didn't plant. That's them. They don't need words to answer. Their presence is the answer. And when your moment of transition comes, you will see that all the signs were true. You will see that you were never walking alone, not even in your hardest seasons. That every moment you thought you were abandoned was in fact a moment they were carrying you, unseen. That every prayer you thought went unanswered was heard, not always in the way you expected, but always in the way you needed. There is no such thing as dying alone. Even those who pass in quiet rooms, far from family or friends, are never truly by themselves. The room may look empty to human eyes, but the spiritual space is filled, overflowing even, with those who have waited, who have watched, who have been counting the days not with dread but with anticipation. Because when a soul crosses, it's not the end of something, it's the return. And no one returns without someone waiting at the door. Imagine standing at the edge of eternity. And instead of being pulled forward, you are gently turned around, not by force, not by command, but by something deep within you, a quiet invitation, a soft nudge that says, look again. And in that moment you begin to see your entire life, every moment, every word, every breath, laid out before you like a great living mosaic. This is the life review, but it's not a courtroom. There's no judge, no jury, no booming voice declaring your worth or failures. What you encounter isn't condemnation, it's clarity. It's you, watching yourself through the lens of total truth. At first, it feels familiar, like memory, but then something extraordinary begins to happen. You don't just recall what happened, you begin to feel what others felt in response to your actions, your words, your silence. You feel the smile you gave a stranger on a dark day and how it lifted their spirit in a way they never told you. You feel the kindness you offered a grieving friend and how it helped them hold on just a little longer. You feel the laughter you shared and how it echoed beyond the room. But you also feel the pain, the sharpness of the words you spoke in anger, the sadness in someone's heart when you turned away instead of reaching out, the loneliness you didn't cause but didn't soothe either. It's not meant to break you, it's meant to awaken you. Because in life you often see only your side of the story. You see through your eyes, feel through your own skin, act from your own perspective. But here, beyond the body, beyond the ego, you step into everyone's experience. Not in judgment, in understanding. And it is intense, not because you're being punished, but because you are finally able to comprehend the ripples you created, the way your energy moved through the lives of others, for better or worse. You see how the tiniest choices mattered, how one moment of courage or cruelty could echo across decades, how your presence or absence shaped more than you realized, and you begin to feel the truth of your life, not in facts, but in vibration. Every interaction becomes a thread, and you begin to see the tapestry of your existence, not in linear time, but as a great web of influence, not in black and white, but in layers of color, tone, and emotion. Some parts glow with brilliance, others dim with regret, but all of it is you, raw, unfiltered, real. There is no shame in what you see. Even the most painful parts are met with compassion. You are not told you were wrong, you are shown how you grew, how your pain shaped you, how your wounds gave you depth, how your mistakes, though heavy, were never wasted. No one points fingers, no one condemns. You are the only one watching. But in this space the ego has no need to defend itself. There's no pretending, no spinning stories. There is only truth, and in that truth, a strange kind of grace. Because even the things you thought were failures often turn out to be the soil from which others' healing began. You see how your suffering softened you, how your darkness taught you compassion, how your silence led someone else to speak louder. You begin to see that you were not a random cluster of choices, but a soul on a journey of becoming. You see where you held back and why. You see where you gave too much and why. And you begin to understand that every moment held purpose, even when it seemed empty. Some souls are overwhelmed in this review, not by punishment, but by emotion, by the enormity of it all. They weep, not from shame, but from revelation. They finally understand. They see what they were too distracted or defended to see while living, and then, often, something beautiful happens. They begin to forgive themselves. They begin to hold the younger versions of themselves, the ones who were afraid, or lost, or angry, with compassion. They reach across time and offer love to the self who didn't know better. They no longer try to rewrite their story. They begin to bless it. This is what the life review is for. It is not a test. It is a mirror. It's a space for you to see yourself through the eyes of your higher self without distortion. A place where you can reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned. Where you can find meaning in what once felt meaningless. Where you can soften the grip of regret, not by denying it, but by understanding it. And the most powerful part? You're not alone while watching. There are presences with you, guides, soul companions, even the very people who were impacted by your life, not to shame you, but to support you, to nod in understanding, to hold your hand through the parts that break your heart, to smile with you through the parts that lift it. There is deep intimacy in this process, because now you know you were never invisible. Everything mattered, every choice echoed. You see the way you touched people's lives without knowing. The words you forgot, they remembered. The kindness you dismissed as small, they held on to for years. The time you sat with someone in silence, thinking you had nothing to offer, that silence saved them. You also see the moments you turned away, not because you were cruel, but because you were tired, scared, confused, and even that is met with love. The life review doesn't erase responsibility. It deepens it. Not as guilt, but as awareness. You begin to realize how powerful you are, how your energy moves through this world like wind through leaves, and how you, yes, you, have the capacity to lift or wound, to expand or contract with every single breath. It is humbling, it is empowering, and it is unforgettable. After the review, many souls feel a deep desire to return. Not necessarily to Earth, but to do better. To serve, to repair, to expand even more, not because they are forced to, but because they want to, because now they know what matters, and what matters is love. Not the poetic kind, not the Hallmark version, but the living, breathing force of connection. The way you made someone feel safe, the way you stayed present, the way you said, "I see you," even without words. That is what lasts. That is what echoes. And when you leave the review, when you've seen it all, felt it all, understood it all, you emerge not with shame, but with wisdom. You walk away holding every version of yourself in your arms, no longer running from your past, but integrating it. You are not the mistakes you made. You are the awareness you bring to them now. And that awareness becomes your compass going forward. Because now you know the truth. You were never here to be perfect. You were here to remember who you are, and to help others do the same. When the soul first separates from the body, it doesn't always soar into the highest light. Often it lingers, not because it's trapped, not because it's punished, but because something still holds it near. This is the near-earth realm. It's the first plane, the closest vibrational layer to the physical world. It overlaps our reality so closely that many souls don't even realize they've crossed. It's a place of softness and echo, where everything looks almost the same but carries a strange stillness. You can walk the same halls, visit the same rooms, touch the walls you once knew, but nothing feels quite solid. Time no longer obeys the same rules. Thought begins to shape movement, memory bends space, you are in between. This is the realm where the soul, newly freed from the body, begins to adjust. And yet, not all souls move through it quickly. Some linger, not out of punishment, but from attachment. They remain near the physical because something inside them isn't ready to let go. It might be a person they can't leave, a child, a partner, a parent. It might be unfinished business, a promise not kept, a truth not spoken. It might be a home, a possession, a fear, a guilt, or even a sense of duty. These bonds, though invisible, are strong enough to hold a soul close to earth long after the heart has stopped beating. Many people imagine the afterlife as a straight upward path. Leave the body, rise to the light, dwell in peace. But the journey is more layered than that. It's a process of letting go, of rising frequency by frequency, of learning how to stop identifying with the world just left behind. In this realm, the soul still sees you, still hears you, still stands beside you as you cry, speak, or pray. They're not floating in some distant cloud. They're here just beyond the veil. They reach for you, whisper to you, try to soothe you. Sometimes they don't even realize they've died. They feel your sorrow and think it's their own. They see you mourning and feel responsible. They stay, trying to help, trying to fix, trying to understand. This is what Casey once referred to as the lingering phase, a state where the soul remains bound to the earthly vibration because it has not fully released its identity. It still thinks of itself as me, the name, the role, the job, the story. It's still operating within the gravity of who it was, rather than expanding into what it now is. And here's the truth. It's not uncommon. Many souls pause here, some for hours, some for years in earth time. It's not because they're bad or lost, it's because death, despite being a release, requires surrender. And surrender is not always immediate. You might wonder why some move on quickly while others don't. The answer is simple: readiness. Those who practiced letting go in life, letting go of control, attachment, fear, and identity, move more freely. Those who held tightly to everything and everyone tend to stay longer. Some souls cling to routines. They return to their homes, sit in familiar chairs, walk the paths they once walked. They linger in the background of the lives they left behind, not out of malice, but out of longing. They want to feel real again. They want to touch, to speak, to be recognized. And when those around them sense their presence, they often respond in fear, not realizing the soul is still just trying to love. Others stay because they are afraid of judgment. They fear what's on the other side of the veil. They've been told stories of wrath, of punishment, of unworthiness. So they linger here, thinking they can delay the inevitable, not knowing that what awaits is not punishment, but understanding, not condemnation, but transformation. Still, others linger because of regret. They want to make amends. They want to reach the person they hurt, to say the words they never spoke. But the realm they're in no longer functions like the physical. Time doesn't stretch ahead like a path. It folds inward. Communication is not with words but with intention. Energy speaks louder than language. And for those still clinging to how things were, this new form of existence can feel confusing. So they stay, watching, waiting, but eventually something shifts. It could be a realization, a sudden moment of awareness. I've passed. Or it could be a message that finally gets through, a prayer, a dream, a whisper from a loved one that says it's okay, you can go. That moment, when the soul finally accepts its transition, is when everything begins to change. They start to feel the pull upward, not a command, not a force, but an invitation, a current of light that says, there's more. And if they accept it, if they release their grip on the life they've just left, they begin to rise. Not upward like climbing stairs, but inward, deeper into the self, deeper into awareness. Their vibration lightens, their attachments dissolve. The near-earth realm begins to fall away, like fog lifting from the morning ground. But even then, many return, not as lingerers but as visitors, helpers, guides. Once they've moved on, they're no longer bound by confusion or regret. They come back not to cling but to support, to comfort, to nudge the living toward healing, toward forgiveness, toward peace. You've likely felt this, a presence in the room that brings calm, a sudden knowing that you're being watched over, the sense that someone is walking with you during your darkest night. That's not imagination, that's resonance. That's a soul, once bound by grief or guilt, now free and choosing to serve. The near-earth realm teaches one great lesson, that love cannot be buried, but neither can attachment. What you carry into death, you meet again. If you carry fear, you'll meet it. If you carry love, it will meet you. This is why the work of the soul must begin long before the final breath. Let go now. Release the need to control. Speak the words you've been holding. Forgive what you've been gripping. Understand that you are not your house, your bank account, your reputation, your past. You are the light inside all of that, and the sooner you identify with the light, the easier the transition becomes. The neo-earth realm is not a place of punishment. It's a place of realization, a liminal hallway between the dense and the divine, a space for remembering. But you don't have to stay there. No one does forever. The soul is always called higher, always drawn toward light. And when you answer that call, not just in death, but in life, you begin to rise even now. Picture the afterlife not as a single place but as a layered reality, an infinite unfolding map of existence where each realm is a reflection of your soul's evolution. Not a hierarchy of worth, but a landscape of vibration. Not steps on a ladder, but doors opening as you become ready to walk through them. This is what has long been known, quietly whispered in mystery schools and sacred texts, as the 7 mansions of the soul. These aren't literal mansions, they are states of being. 7 distinct realms of consciousness through which the soul journeys after it leaves the physical body. Each one is more refined than the last. Each one vibrates at a higher frequency, and in each, the soul encounters exactly what it needs to grow, to heal, to remember what it truly is. Think of it like school, not in the rigid, structured way you've come to know, but in the organic unfolding of understanding. First grade is not less valuable than college. It's simply a different level of awareness. You wouldn't hand a child a quantum physics textbook and expect comprehension. In the same way, the soul is never rushed, never forced. It's guided gently through the levels it's prepared to meet. In the first realm, the soul is still deeply connected to earth. This is the realm where many souls awaken immediately after death. They still identify with their old selves, their name, their personality, their habits. The surroundings feel familiar, sometimes even indistinguishable from life. But something's different. Time bends. Thought starts to create experience. Here the soul begins to realize, I've crossed over. It's the kindergarten of spirit, a space of adjustment, orientation, remembering how to walk without a body. The second realm is subtler. The soul starts to shed its earthbound filters. The mind softens. The ego loosens its grip. This realm is filled with review, with self-reflection, with gentle guidance. Souls begin to recognize their patterns, their traumas, their repetitive lessons. They are met by guides, teachers, and often members of their soul family who have walked with them across lifetimes. It's here the soul begins to ask not, what happened to me, but what did I become through it? The third realm deepens that inquiry. It becomes less about self and more about connection. The soul begins to sense its unity with others. Here, compassion blooms, not as an idea, but as a visceral, lived experience. You feel the interwoven web of every life you touched. You understand that no act was isolated. Every kindness, every wound, every silence sent ripples across the fabric of existence. Souls who dwell here often choose to stay for a time, helping others behind the scenes, becoming guides, healers, whisperers to the living. This is a realm of service, of soft power, of spiritual responsibility. The fourth realm is radiant. Here, form begins to dissolve. The soul no longer sees itself in linear terms. It begins to identify less with story and more with essence. You are not your past lives, your roles, your names. You are frequency, light, purpose. The beings here move through thought and intention. Communication is instantaneous. Love is not spoken, it is. Many mystics during deep meditation or near-death experiences have touched this realm briefly. They speak of indescribable color, of music without sound, of beings made of light who speak directly into the heart. In the fifth realm, individuality becomes fluid. Souls operate in collectives, groups of consciousness who've evolved together. It's not loss of identity, it's expansion of it. Imagine being you, but also understanding you are part of a larger soul, one with many expressions across space and time. You are no longer a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean, aware of each drop. Purpose here is vast. These souls help architect entire incarnational systems. They influence planetary energies. They hold the memory of civilizations long forgotten by Earth, working to guide awakening from beyond the veil. The sixth realm is not describable in human language. It moves beyond duality, beyond thought. Here the soul doesn't review, doesn't teach, doesn't even reflect. It is. Pure consciousness. It no longer needs to process. It simply radiates. Time ceases to exist. These souls don't do, they become. They are the light in the room when no one is there. the inspiration that enters your mind unbidden. They are the frequency behind revelation. Rarely do they interact directly, but their presence is everywhere, encoded into creation itself. And then there is the seventh, the mansion beyond mansions. Here form dissolves entirely. There is only oneness. This is reunion with Source, not in theory but in direct experience. There is no you and God. There is only the ocean returning to itself. It's not annihilation, it's completion. The soul doesn't disappear, it becomes all. Light, dark, matter, space, thought, silence. It's where the journey began and where it returns. Few souls reach this realm immediately after death, and they're not expected to. Each mansion exists to meet the soul exactly where it is. There is no race, no comparison, no shame. A soul resting in the second realm is not behind one dwelling in the sixth, just as a first-grade student is not less important than a scholar. They are in process, they are in evolution. And all of this vast unfolding of dimensions, this spiral of becoming, it's not only for after you die. You can touch these realms now. Every time you meditate, surrender, love without condition, you taste a higher frequency. Every time you forgive, you ascend. Every moment of stillness, every act of presence lifts your soul one step closer to its own remembrance. This is what religion failed to explain. This is what rigid dogma could never contain. That heaven is not a singular place and hell is not a fiery pit. The soul doesn't pass or fail, it grows. It rises through resonance. And then you move through these mansions, you begin to realize the journey was never about earning paradise, it was about remembering your nature, reclaiming the truth you've always carried within you, that you are not broken, not lost, not unworthy. You are light in a process of refinement. Each life you live is like a course in a grand curriculum. Some are peaceful, some are turbulent. All of them teach, all of them shape your frequency, all of them are sacred. And when this life ends, you don't float into oblivion or wait in line for judgment. You step into the classroom that matches your vibration. You meet the next lesson, the next layer, the next revelation. So the question is not, where will I go when I die? The question is, what am I becoming now? Because every thought, every choice, every breath is already building the mansion you will walk into next. Time, as you know it, is a teacher of the physical world. It gives structure, pacing, sequence. It's how you've learned to understand growth, change, decay, and death. Time says this comes before that, and your mind agrees. Your calendar, your memories, your entire sense of identity depends on this illusion of linear progression, past, present, future. But when the soul steps beyond the veil of the physical, time begins to unravel, not disappear, just dissolve into something higher. In the higher planes, time ceases to exist in the way you've known it. It is no longer a river that carries you forward, but an ocean in which all things already exist, simultaneously, eternally. Past lives, future lives, parallel lives. They are not lined up like beads on a string. They are stacked like layers of light, intersecting, vibrating, responding to each other in real time. There is no waiting. There is no hurrying. There is only now, but not the now of a ticking clock, the now of infinite possibility, all present at once. This is why so many near-death experiencers come back, saying, "It felt like I was only gone for a few minutes, but I saw everything," or "I lived entire lifetimes, yet no time passed." What they are trying to describe is the multidimensional nature of higher existence. It defies language, because in that space, being replaces duration. You don't move through time, you access it. Imagine a great library. In your world, you walk aisle by aisle. You can't be on page 1 and page 300 at the same time, but in the higher realms, that same library becomes holographic. You don't read page by page. You absorb the entire story in an instant. Every word, every meaning, every consequence, all at once. That is how your soul sees your life. Not as a series of events, but as a frequency, a compelling sound that echoes through existence. This is also why prophets, true seers, can glimpse what you call the future, because in those higher states of consciousness they are no longer bound by the sequence of time. They tune into vibrations that are already happening in other layers of reality, not because they are predicting, but because they are remembering forward. To them, the future isn't ahead, it's already here. It just hasn't yet crystallized in your dimension. This is why you dream of things before they happen, why you sense someone's death days before the call comes, why sometimes you meet someone and know you've already lived an entire lifetime with them. These are not fantasies, they are fractures in the illusion of linear time, brief moments where the soul speaks louder than the mind. And the soul does not speak in sequence, it speaks in symbols, in frequency, in knowing. Now you might ask, if the future already exists, do I really have free will? The answer is yes, but not in the way you think. You see, all possibilities exist in the higher planes. Infinite timelines, infinite outcomes, like streams branching from a single spring. Every choice you make tunes you to one of those streams. You're not creating the future from scratch. You're selecting from what already exists. That's how powerful you are. Your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions, they are not just influencing the future, they are choosing it right now. This is why fear can become a prophecy, because it locks your attention onto a lower timeline. It vibrates with the outcome you don't want, and by matching that frequency you invite it in, not because you deserve it, but because you aligned with it. Likewise, hope is not just a comfort, it's a navigation tool. It steers you toward higher versions of reality. Not because hope is naive, but because hope is a signal to the universe, I am willing to see more than what is obvious, and the universe responds. In the higher planes, there is no cause and effect in the way you understand it. There's no waiting for something to happen so that something else can happen. Instead, there's a constant interchange of energy, a simultaneity of intention and manifestation. This is why spiritual growth can feel sudden. You struggle for years and then one day a flash of clarity. Not because it came in time, but because your soul finally aligned with a truth that always existed. The same applies to healing. You might work for years to forgive, and then in one moment it's done, not because time made it possible, but because frequency did. This is the disintegration of cause and effect. Things don't happen because of something, they happen in alignment with something. Energy precedes form, intention precedes manifestation. Everything you experience begins as a vibration. You feel this in life. The more present you are, the more you notice synchronicities. You think of someone and they call. You speak a dream aloud and the right teacher appears. These aren't random. They are glimpses into the truth, that time is just a staging ground. Behind it all is a field of energy where everything is already connected. And in that field, you're not walking toward your destiny, you're remembering it. That's why the greatest mystics have always told you to look within, not because the world is unimportant, but because the world is delayed. It's a slow mirror. What you see outside is the echo of what you already are inside. In the higher planes, that delay disappears, the mirror becomes instant. You think and it is. You feel and it forms. This is why higher realms require purity of intention, not perfection, but clarity. Because there's no buffer between thought and outcome, no time to edit, to correct, to hide. Everything is immediate, transparent. This is what scares some souls who are still bound by confusion. They resist rising because they're not ready for that level of self-responsibility. They still believe they need time to become worthy. But in truth, they already are. They just haven't accepted it. And when they do, time falls away like a costume after the final act. They remember, I was never becoming, I was always being. This is the essence of eternity, not endless duration, but timeless presence. So what does this mean for you, now, in a body, bound to clocks and calendars? It means you are more than you appear. It means you don't have to wait for healing, for purpose, for connection. It's already there, in the field of your consciousness. You can step into it, not by rushing toward it, but by aligning with it. The future you dream of already exists. The peace you seek, already within you. The soul you miss, already beside you. All of it waiting in the now that lives beyond time. So take a breath, not as a countdown, but as an anchor. Because in this moment, this eternal, infinite moment, you are not waiting for the future to arrive. You are choosing which future to receive. There's a reason why some people feel instantly familiar, why you meet someone for the first time and yet you feel like you've known them for lifetimes. There's a reason certain connections pierce deeper than time should allow, why you can't explain the closeness, why you just know them. Because you do. These are your soul companions, your eternal family, not always linked by blood but by energy, by memory, by sacred contract. You don't journey through lifetimes alone. You travel in clusters, soul groups, bound by shared purpose, growth, and karma. You incarnate together again and again, weaving through different roles, learning from each other in love, in conflict, in triumph and loss. Sometimes your mother in this life was your son in another, your closest friend was once your sister. That stranger who triggers something unexplainable inside you, maybe they were once your lover, maybe they betrayed you, or maybe they saved you. The roles shift, the costumes change, but the soul behind the eyes remains. This is not reincarnation as punishment, it's reincarnation as artistry. Together you and your soul family compose symphonies across time, each life a new movement, a new variation on an eternal theme. And like any great orchestra, each member plays a role in helping the whole evolve. You don't always recognize them at first. Sometimes they appear as catalysts, challenging you, forcing growth through friction. Others bring calm, grace, healing. But always, beneath the surface, there is the silent agreement. I will meet you again. And you do, lifetime after lifetime. This is why, as death nears, many people begin to feel a presence gathering around them. Not just one guide or angel, but many. A quiet chorus. Souls they haven't seen in decades. Some they don't remember with their minds, but instantly recognize in spirit. The veil thins, and you begin to sense them. At first it's subtle, a dream, a flash of someone long gone, the feeling that someone is standing just out of sight. But it deepens. As the body prepares to release, the soul begins to reattune to its original frequency, and that frequency begins to harmonize with the rest of its cluster. They come closer, not to take you but to welcome you, to walk with you, to remind you that the end of the body is not the end of the story. It is merely the close of one chapter in a book that spans lifetimes. And when the last page turns, you do not fall into silence. You are greeted by the same souls who helped you write it. This reunion is one of the most profound experiences a soul can have. There are no awkward introductions, no explanations, just recognition, just love. You fall into each other like stars returning to constellations. You remember everything, not just from this life, but from the tapestry of all the ones before. You laugh at how serious you took things, you cry at how beautiful it all was, and then you rest. Not as escape, but as restoration, as renewal. Some souls in your cluster may still be living on Earth, but even they will visit you in the in-between. Their higher selves, their eternal aspects, do not sleep. They meet you in dreams, in meditations, in the space between heartbeats, and you recognize them. Even if their face is different, their energy is not. This is why some people, even while still alive, feel drawn to certain individuals for reasons they can't explain. It's not logic, it's remembrance. Something ancient pulls you closer. Something inside whispers, there you are. I've been waiting. You've probably felt this, maybe as an instant sense of safety, maybe as deep emotion you can't place, or maybe as a knowing so strong it scares you because it doesn't follow any rules you've been taught. But your soul knows. And it holds these bonds like golden threads. Even the people who broke you, often part of your soul family, because sometimes the deepest lessons come through the hardest experiences. Sometimes the agreement made between souls isn't, let's love each other gently, but let's help each other grow, no matter what it takes. And those lessons, though painful, shape the soul more than comfort ever could. That doesn't excuse abuse. It doesn't mean you should accept harm. But from the soul's perspective, even chaos can be alchemy. And when you pass, those tangled threads begin to unravel. You start to see why it all happened, why certain people were drawn to you, why others fell away, why some hearts broke open and others shut down. You begin to see the choreography of it all, the way your lives overlapped like waves on a shore. And it's beautiful. It's sacred. It makes sense in a way life rarely does. There's no scoreboard. No soul rankings. Some in your cluster may be further along in their journey, others may be newer to the path, but each brings something essential, and you agreed to dance this strange, beautiful, sometimes painful dance together. Not because you had to, but because your love for each other is that deep. You're not climbing toward enlightenment alone. You are rising in unison, sometimes at different speeds, sometimes in different directions, but always bound by the same essence. Some souls leave your life early and you wonder why. Others stay for decades, changing you slowly, gently, but every one of them leaves a mark. Every one of them helped shape the frequency of who you are right now. And when you finally return, when your soul crosses the threshold and steps back into the unseen, you don't just meet them in reunion, you remember them in truth. You remember that you chose each other, that you loved each other across lifetimes, that none of it was by accident. Even now as you read this, your soul family is near. You may not see them, but they see you. They guide your choices, protect your path, whisper into your intuition, and when you feel alone, when you feel forgotten, it's not because they're absent. It's because the noise of the world is too loud to hear them, but they're there. And one day soon that noise will fall away. You'll hear them again, not with your ears, but with your entire being. And when you do, it will feel like coming home. There is a moment beyond the moment. After the journey through planes of vibration, after the reunion with soul companions, after the life review and the lessons and the letting go, there is something more, something deeper, something older than the stars. You return to the source. Not a place, not a throne, not a deity with a name and face, but a consciousness, a light beyond all lights, the birthplace of your soul, the original spark that breathed you into being. It is not outside you, it is you. And yet, when you touch it, it feels like stepping into something larger than the entire cosmos. It's like falling into an ocean of pure awareness and realizing the ocean is awake and it remembers you. Not as someone separate, not as a visitor, but as itself. You dissolve, but you're not lost. You become vast, luminous, eternal, but also intimate. You feel every heartbeat that ever was, every tear ever shed, every laugh, every prayer, every act of courage and surrender, because all of it has always lived within this great field of being. This is what Casey once described as the most intense love imaginable. A love not earned, not negotiated. A love not dependent on what you did right or wrong. It simply is. Total, unconditional, infinite. There is no language for this. It's not emotion, it's not ecstasy, it's remembrance. The moment when every piece of you that ever fractured is gathered again. Every fear, every failure, every story you told yourself about being broken, unworthy, forgotten, burns away in the brilliance of that light. And you are left with only truth. You were never separate. You were never lost. You only forgot. This is the great homecoming, the moment your soul, no longer bound by density, merges fully with the source from which it came. Not to stay forever, though some do, but to reabsorb the fullness of divine memory, to remember what lies beneath all lifetimes, all roles, all masks. You were born from love. You are sustained by love. You return to love. But perhaps the greatest secret is this: that reunion isn't just reserved for after death. The memory of that light, that union, that cosmic embrace, it lives inside you right now. Buried, yes, beneath layers of distraction, pain, programming, but it's there, a seed, a spark, a compass in your chest that always points home. You've felt it before, maybe in meditation or in the quiet stillness after great loss. Maybe when you held your newborn child and felt time stop. Maybe when you stood in nature and suddenly forgot your name but felt more alive than ever. That was it. That was the echo of the source calling you back. You don't have to wait to die to feel it. You don't have to escape the body to remember who you are. You only have to get quiet, still, open, because the soul does not recognize noise. It speaks in silence, and in that silence something sacred stirs. You begin to feel held, not by anyone, but by everything. The air, the stars, the breath moving through your lungs. It all begins to feel alive, aware, intentional. You're not surviving, you're participating in something holy. And suddenly, the idea that you were ever alone becomes absurd. When you remember the source, your entire life begins to shift. Not because your circumstances change, but because your perception does. You stop striving to be worthy, you start acting from worthiness. You stop fearing loss. You start seeing that nothing real can ever be lost. Even your grief begins to transform. Because you realize the ones you mourn have not vanished into nothing, they have returned to the same light you are slowly remembering. And from that light they reach back, not with words, but with energy, with reminders, with synchronicities and dreams and sacred moments that make you stop and whisper, that was them. They're all home. And one day, so will you be. But you don't have to rush. The journey is sacred, every tear, every lesson. Every challenge that breaks you open is part of your return. It's not a mistake. It's a mirror. Each moment of this life is an invitation to remember a little more of the light you carry, and as you do, you begin to notice something else. You start bringing others home too. Not by preaching, not by convincing, but by being, by becoming a lighthouse, a steady presence in a frantic world. When you radiate the memory of the source, people feel it, even if they don't know why. They begin to soften, to question, to remember something ancient that once sang inside their own chest. This is how the world changes, not through force but through frequency. The memory of the source is contagious. It spreads through the quiet choices, through forgiveness, through stillness, through the courage to live from love instead of fear. And that memory, though dormant in many, is eternal. It cannot be deleted, only ignored. But now that you've remembered, even if just a little, you can't go back. The spark is lit, the compass is active, and whether in this body or the next, whether in this life or the beyond, you will keep walking, step by step, realm by realm, until you return to that brilliance, until you remember that you never truly left. Because you are not just going home, you are home already, underneath the identity, beneath the stories. Past the illusions of separation, there is a center of stillness that has always been connected to the source. The only difference between now and then is awareness. When you die, that awareness explodes open. But even now you can begin to feel the edges softening. You can begin to hear the hum behind the silence. And in that hum is the voice of the cosmos saying, "Welcome back. You never had to earn it. You only had to remember." Death, as final as it may seem, is not the end of your story. In fact, it is only the turning of a page. What lies beyond that page is not dictated by fate, not determined by some cosmic authority handing out assignments. What happens next, where you go, who you become, whether you return or remain, is your choice. The soul is not a prisoner in some celestial system shuffled into new lives by unseen forces. It is sovereign, conscious, aware, and when the dust of the last life settles, when the review has been completed, the lessons absorbed, and the reunion with the source has wrapped you in that overwhelming light of love, you are asked a question, not with words, not in any language known to earth, but with a resonance that vibrates through the deepest layers of your being. Are you ready for more? More can mean many things. For some it means returning to earth, taking on another body, another name, another series of challenges, joys, heartbreaks, and awakenings, not because they must, but because they want to, because there is still something to learn or teach or transform, because love pulls them back into form not for themselves, but for those who still need light in the dark. Others choose to remain in the higher realms, not out of fear or hesitation, but because their next chapter lies in guiding others from beyond. They become teachers, builders, architects of soul paths. They assist in healing planetary wounds, balancing energies, preparing certain spirits for incarnation. They work behind the veil, yet their fingerprints are everywhere. Inspired thoughts, mysterious synchronicities, even the sudden courage you didn't know you had. And still others enter a phase of study, a kind of soul university, not learning facts but absorbing universal wisdom, reintegrating with soul families, reviewing not just one life but patterns across multiple lifetimes, understanding deeper truths about vibration, choice, and creation. These souls are not idle. They are preparing for greater service, tuning themselves like instruments before the next great song. You see, the afterlife is not a waiting room. It is a realm of purpose, and that purpose is directed by you, the true you, the eternal you, not the self shaped by fear or habit, but the soul that remembers its own power. This is one of the most profound truths that Casey revealed, that reincarnation is not mechanical, it is intentional. The soul chooses to return, not to be tested, but to evolve, not to be punished, but to perfect its understanding of love in the most complex, challenging, and beautiful classroom of all: Earth. When you choose to come back, it is with a plan. You don't just drop into a random life. You select the conditions, the family, the geography, the themes. You choose obstacles not to suffer, but to learn how to transcend them. You select your gifts, your sensitivities, even some of your wounds, because in healing them you offer healing to others. And it is always a choice. There are guides who walk you through it, beings of incredible wisdom who help you map out your next journey. They don't command, they suggest. They show you potential paths, what you might experience, who you might affect, how your presence might shift the vibration of an entire lineage or town or country. And you, in that state of expanded awareness, say yes, not because it will be easy, but because it will be worth it. Sometimes the soul chooses to return quickly, within years or even months of a passing their back, usually to rejoin a soul family, complete a mission, or shift a karmic thread before it knots again. Other times the soul waits, watches, works from the other side. But the decision is never made lightly. There's a deep knowing in that place, a knowing of what incarnation costs. The density, the forgetting, the risk of losing sight of your true self again, and yet the draw to earth remains strong, because there's something sacred about learning in form, about forgetting and then remembering again, about loving through limits, serving in the shadows, healing in a place where pain still echoes. It's one thing to understand truth in the realm of spirit, it's another to embody it on earth, to wake up in a body that gets tired, surrounded by a world that doesn't always believe in what you know to be real, and to still choose love. That is mastery. That is why so many souls return. They come back not to escape karma, but to transform it, not to prove their worth, but to remember it, and to help others remember theirs. Even your current life, this one, the one you're living right now, was chosen. You may not remember choosing it, but somewhere, before your birth, you looked at the blueprint of what was to come. You saw the heartbreak, the joy, the loss, the great loves, the betrayals, the revelations, and something in you said, yes, that's the one, because it held the exact mix of circumstances needed for your soul to grow. And you're still choosing, every moment, with every thought, every act of courage, every refusal to close your heart. You are still writing the next chapter. Death will not strip that agency from you. It will amplify it. You will see clearly then what you only sense now, that your soul is the author, the editor, and the reader of its own eternal story. You don't reincarnate because someone else says so. You return because something within you recognizes that the dance isn't done, the melody still plays, and you have more to give, more to sing, more to become. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be the light someone else is searching for. Maybe the next chapter of your soul isn't about you at all. Maybe it's about the child you'll inspire, the heart you'll mend, the stranger you'll help remember that they, too, are more than flesh and name. This is the beauty of soul agency. You are not bound by fate, you are woven into destiny, and you help shape it every time you return. So if death ever feels like a door slamming shut, remember this. It's only the closing of one act, and when the silence settles and the curtain rises again, you will step forward, not as someone new, but as someone deeper, wiser, whispering, let's begin again. There comes a moment, subtle at first, when the soul begins to prepare. You may not know why, but you feel it. The slowing of the world around you, the quieting of things that once seemed urgent. What once demanded your attention now feels less meaningful. You look at the ticking clock differently. You begin to listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. This is the sacred preparation. Not for an ending, for a return. You are not dying, you are remembering. And this remembering carries with it a kind of urgency. Not one of panic, but of clarity. There are things you must put down, things you must forgive, things you must bless, before they weigh you down in the moment of transition. The soul cannot rise while clinging to stories it was never meant to carry into eternity. This is why the final season of life, no matter how long or short, is holy. It is not a time to fade, it is a time to release. This was the essence of Casey's guidance to those nearing the threshold. Not advice rooted in fear, but in sacred truth. that the way you leave this life shapes the way you enter the next, that every moment spent in forgiveness, in detachment, in love acts as spiritual oxygen, preparing the soul for its next breath in the unseen world. Detachment is not about indifference, it's about freedom. It's about loosening your grip on what can no longer serve you, possessions, titles, old roles, and unspoken expectations. The house you built, the name you made for yourself, the responsibilities that weighed on you for decades, these are part of your earth identity, yes, but they are not your essence. They are garments worn by the soul, not the soul itself. And now those garments must be folded and set down. This doesn't mean you reject the life you lived. On the contrary, you honor it. You look back with eyes of compassion. You recognize the chapters where you grew, where you hurt others, where you healed. You bless the story and then you open your hand. You let it go. There is a kind of wisdom that arises in this space, a clarity that tells you what matters and what never truly did. You begin to see that the grudges you carried were chains around your own ankles, that the arguments you replayed were echoes, not truths, that the pride you clung to was just fear dressed in importance. Forgiveness becomes less about others and more about you. You forgive not because the other deserves it, but because your soul does. You forgive your parents, not for being perfect, but for being human. You forgive your children for the ways they didn't understand you or became someone different than you dreamed. You forgive the ones who hurt you, not because they were right, but because you deserve peace. You even forgive life itself for the disappointments, the illnesses, the missed chances. And, finally, you forgive yourself. You forgive the things you didn't do, the times you weren't brave, the love you didn't express, the chances you let pass. You don't excuse these things, you understand them. And in that understanding, you begin to feel something incredible. You begin to feel lighter, because every act of forgiveness is a cutting of cords, and the more you cut, the more your soul begins to rise, not in body, but in vibration. This is the sacred preparation. It's not about how to die, it's about how to live in these final days as if you already remember who you are. A soul, timeless, indestructible, infinitely loved. You are not racing against time, you are reclaiming eternity. There are things you can do now that ripple into the unseen. Sit with someone you love and speak plainly, not about the weather, about you, about what you've learned, about what you regret, about what matters. Look at the sky in silence and feel how small you are and how that smallness is sacred. Touch something you created, a photo, a letter, a meal, and bless it as your offering to the world. Say thank you to your body, not for how it looked, but for how it carried you. And say goodbye not as an ending, but as a recognition that nothing real can ever be lost. Casey once described this final work as a sacred ritual, a stripping away of illusions so the soul could rise clean. You don't want to bring resentment into the next world. You don't want to carry guilt. You don't want to leave behind confusion or fear in the hearts of those you love. So speak, clarify, embrace, release. Even your breath begins to change when you live this way. It becomes softer, deeper, more present. You are no longer projecting yourself forward, trying to outrun the inevitable. You are stepping fully into the moment, the eternal now, the space where the soul feels most at home. And when you live this way, something else begins to happen. You begin to hear them, not with your ears, but with your awareness. Those who have already crossed. They begin to draw near, not in shadow, not in sadness, but in support. A mother who passed long ago, a partner who left before you were ready, friends, guides, companions. They don't come to take you, they come to hold you, to remind you that the moment you feared is not the end, it's the reunion. And you'll feel their presence, not always clearly, but deeply. You'll hear your name in a dream. You'll sense a warmth in the room when no one is there. You'll feel the soft pressure of a hand on your shoulder in the stillness of night. And in those moments you'll remember. You are not dying. You are returning. And when that moment comes, when your breath slows and your body begins to loosen its grip, you will not be afraid. You will have already begun the journey. You will have said what needed to be said, forgiven what needed to be forgiven, blessed what needed to be blessed. You will have lived as someone who remembers. And when the veil opens, you won't be reaching into the unknown. You will be stepping into the familiar. The light will not blind you, it will embrace you. The voices will not frighten you, they will welcome you. And you will know, in the deepest way possible, that the life you just lived was not a mistake. It was a sacred chapter in an eternal story. And now that chapter is complete.